Get Rich Education is brought to you by International Coffee Farms. Own your very own parcel of a Panama coffee farm today.
Welcome to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, giving you information and ideas on the investment that has turned more ordinary people into millionaires and billionaires than anything else, and can provide you with more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, and educator, Keith Weinhold.
Welcome to Get Rich Education, Show 32. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, constant purveyor of an abundance mindset. If we're scarce in any way, it's only because the abundance mentality is scarce. Your future depends on what you do today, and what you do today is guided by what you know today. Well, your vision of the future is going to change today. We're talking about future technologies with visionary author and entrepreneur Stephen Kotler and how it impacts your investment life and your real estate. In fact, Stephen and I are going to talk about the most valuable real estate in the universe, and you've almost certainly never thought about it before. You know, the best investment that you can make is an investment in yourself, and my goal today is to have you think at a level that stretches your comfort zone. Being a savvy investor means anticipating what's coming next and then positioning yourself appropriately to benefit. Once you're exposed to bold new ideas, you know what that does? It creates space in your head that didn't exist previously. It broadens your mental bandwidth. Now, one wouldn't think this, but a lot of times, just being exposed to the idea of a future technology for the first time, well, that's a more moving experience than that moment of realization down the road later on when that concept has finally gone mainstream. Clearing that headspace to take it in first, that early cognition registry, that can be the more profound experience. And that's what will make today transcendent for you as a listener if you haven't been exposed to this before. All right, now here's a fun little example of where we've been in just the last 10 years. Okay, it's hard to believe, but 10 years ago, the first video was uploaded to YouTube. Android was a small startup that Google had just acquired. Facebook.com was only a year old, and it acquired the URL facebook.com for just $200,000. 10 years ago, an early prototype of an autonomous car completed the DARPA Grand Challenge for the first time. 10 years ago, the term drone, that meant a military weapon system. Bitcoin and blockchain, they didn't even exist, and they wouldn't be created for 3 more years. 10 years ago, there were 6.4 billion humans on Earth, and only 1 billion of them were online, and none of them had ever heard of Uber or Airbnb. All right, fast forward 10 years to today, YouTube has more than 1 billion users who watch hundreds of millions of hours of video every day. There's 300 hours of video uploaded to YouTube every minute. Google now has over 1 billion active Android users. Remember, 10 years ago, fewer people than that were online at all. Today, Facebook has 1.4 billion users from every country on Earth. Today, every major car manufacturer is working on an autonomous model, and Google's autonomous cars have logged more than 1 million miles driving themselves. Drones, they're now used by children. I mean, they can be purchased at prices ranging from $50 to $1,500. The largest consumer drone company, it's called DJI, started in 2006. That's now valued at $10 billion. Blockchain companies like Bitcoin, they've raised hundreds of millions of dollars in venture capital, and they're poised to potentially be disruptive as the internet itself. Today, there are close to 7.4 billion humans on Earth, and over 3 billion of them are online. Uber started back in 2009. That's now valued at $40 billion. Airbnb started in 2007, $20 billion. So There are so many fun examples of exponential change from the last decade out there like that. The question is, what will the world look like a decade from now? It sort of evokes a little Yogi Berra here, whom I've met before in New York, when he said, "The future ain't what it used to be." I love Yogi Berra quotes. Some people, they think that they fear the future, but they actually don't fear the future as much as they just fear the unknown. Now, this future talk, it's not about dispensing fear. In fact, just the opposite. This is about education, which dispels fear. In fact, just look at how optimistic this is, all right? Take the title of today's guest, one of Stephen Kotler's well-renowned recent works that he co-authored with Peter Diamandis. The book is called Abundance: The Future is Better Than You Think. Another one is called Bold: How to Go Big, Create Wealth, and Impact the World. I mean, very optimistic titles there. It's about making the world a better place for everyone, rich and poor, including bringing sound housing and clean water to billions that don't have it. That's what they're doing. Abundance and Bold are enormously popular books. President Bill Clinton called the book Bold a visionary roadmap for change. Abundance has been the #1 bestseller on Amazon. I mean, over all of Amazon. Stephen Kotler resonates globally. You might be a Stephen Kotler fan already. He's well-renowned to the extent that he has his own Wikipedia page because he turns out New York Times best-selling books seemingly every time you turn around, and he's been a contributor to Time, Forbes, Newsweek, a lot of other popular media, and Stephen runs his own research institute. Now, back in episode 13, I did a show about driverless cars, also known as autonomous cars, and how their adoption will change your real estate investing because it can change where people want to live. So we won't delve into that again here. Stephen and I are going to discuss the most valuable real estate in the universe, which is, get this, asteroids. It sounds a little nuts on basis, but utilizing this real estate, if you will, it could be closer than you think. After that, we're going to bring it back down to earth in a literal sense and talk about 3D printing and some other disruptive technology. Now, no listener left behind here. 3D printing, three-dimensional printing, that's an additive manufacturing process where you can make three-dimensional solid objects by laying down layer after layer after layer of material until the object is complete. They now make small, affordable 3D printers for the consumer where you can print everyday objects right at home. Well, I've been asked before about 3D printing's effect on the future of real estate. I think it can alter the geography of distribution and where jobs are located because people can soon print things at home routinely and then it no longer has to be shipped from a place where a human had to manufacture it. Now, you've heard of offshoring, as over the past few decades, our manufacturing jobs in America went to Asia and elsewhere. Well, some forecast that 3D printing could help revolutionize what some call onshoring or even reshoring. This is huge. I mean, the made in China era could be fading away as we can print items here that were previously manufactured with low-cost human labor in China, Indonesia, Vietnam, or the Philippines, and that can revitalize United States manufacturing jobs once again. In fact, you yourself will become the manufacturer because you'll print the item at home yourself a lot of times. So this is set to disrupt supply chain dynamics globally and locally. Really the key question for you is, where are the jobs going to be located? That's our key question as real estate investors. It's those local market jobs that produce income, and that's the durability of your stream of cash flow. 3D printing and robotics can change where the jobs are located, and that could be good for U.S. and Canadian real estate investors as many expect more manufacturing jobs back here in this reshoring. Now, what about the printing of the home itself? Yes, printing the walls in everything, which has been done to some extent for a while now. I think that it would be substantially further down the road, if ever, that 3D printing of the home itself could lower construction costs enough so that it would substantially impact real estate values. I mean, that's because there are a few opposing forces to that. As society advances, each successive generation over time has wanted more home, more space, more amenities, not less. And that's in terms of both a greater home size and better features and amenities inside the home too. Even if you disregard all that and 3D printing got so innovative and had such a user-friendly interface that it made the cost of labor to construct a new home drop substantially, there's still the cost of material to build with. You'll still need materials. And, another factor to consider is that with real estate values, typically more or less 30% of the cost of a property is in the value of the land. The land portion has nothing to do with a 3D printed home or building. Well, we're going to touch on all these things and more. Coming up next on Get Rich Education, it's Stephen Kotler. Through Get Rich Education and International Coffee Farms, you can own your own half-acre parcels of a passive income-generating coffee farm in Panama for as little as $12,000. It's a low-risk opportunity with an average annual return projected to be 13 to 15%. The farms are professionally managed for you on a turnkey basis, and you own the land. And you can give as well as receive by helping International Coffee Farms create good jobs that pay a living wage and provide medical, pension, and other benefits to very poor Panamanian coffee farm workers and their families, often for the first time in their lives.
This is Entrepreneur on Fire's John Lee Dumas. Don't follow money, make money follow you with Get Rich Education.
Welcome to Get Rich Education with our guest today, Stephen Kotler, the author of 7 books. And Stephen is very audacious and transcendent with his subject matter. He co-authored the books Abundance and Bold with Peter Diamandis. And most recently, Stephen is the author of Tomorrowland, Our Journey from Science Fiction to Science Fact. Stephen and Peter say, if you want to make $1 billion, you need to help 1 billion people. The world's biggest problems are really also the world's biggest opportunities. And one metric that they talk about in identifying a goal is, can your goal change the world or not? And if it's not, maybe your goal's not big enough. And one area that Stephen has really been leading some discovery into are the possibilities for mining some of our precious resources from asteroids, going beyond Earth for our resources. So welcome to the show, Stephen.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit more about asteroid mining? What are you doing with researching that?
So asteroid mining is one of the ideas that I talk about in Tomorrowland, right? Which is one of those science fiction technologies or science fiction ideas that is slowly becoming science fact. So asteroid mining, as a concept, it goes back to the late 1800s, early 1900s. All kinds of science fiction writers have written about it. It started to become a little bit more of a reality kind of in the 90s. There were a trio of NASA missions, or 2 American space missions and 1 Japanese, that all kind of caught up with asteroids. One of them even kind of scratched the surface a little bit and brought back dust samples. What is interesting about this is, all the kind of raw materials, minerals that we need here on Earth, whether you're talking about precious minerals like gold, platinum, and so forth, or things that we need for high-tech electronics that we don't have enough of. All these things are found very, very plentifully on asteroids. So the idea is space technology has finally gotten to the point where we can start catching up with these giant floating rocks, basically, and mining them for our minerals and ores. And it sounds totally crazy, right? But if you go back 20 years ago and you think, okay, how do I drill at the bottom of the North Sea for oil, right? This is a very, very far away, 10,000, 20,000 feet down territory. It's very, very hostile.
Right.
And we have to extract minerals from it. And what we discovered then is companies are willing to place $1 billion of bets on North Sea oil platforms. So we already know kind of that there is money and hunger for access to resources, right, who are willing to take these kind of chances. Turns out in the past 10 years, technology to mine an asteroid has sort of caught up with the technology to build a North Sea oil platform, right? So it's now within possibility, and people are starting to take it very, very seriously. My partner in Bold and Abundance, Peter Diamandis, teamed up with tons of different people, Larry Page, for example, Eric Schmidt, a bunch of the folks out of Google, and created Planetary Resources, an asteroid mining company that is, moving this field forward. So is this going to happen in the next 10 years? Probably not. But within the next 20 to 30 years, yeah, we're really, really starting to get there. And, the flip side is it's going to totally destabilize and alter the world's economy. If you mined all the platinum there is on Earth, it fills basically a flatbed truck. In space, it's extremely plentiful. Platinum is a phenomenal conductor of electricity, right? But we don't build much on the backs of it because it's so rare. Soon, could change the entire shape of the economy in this one new technology.
Yeah, in a sense, it doesn't seem all that far-fetched to explore asteroid mining, because when you think about the history of humankind, a lot of times what has really motivated pushing the edge of the frontier, historically, it has been resource extraction.
It's always been resource extraction. Yeah, that was one of Peter's big goal, right, was I just want to go into space. I want to open space to people. I want space colonization. I want all that. But what he discovered after starting 6 or 7 different kind of private space companies and creating the X Prize is that it's not enough. Human curiosity is a great motivator, but it's not enough to really open up space to development. For that, you need an economic engine, which is why he started taking asteroid mining more seriously and why a lot of other people have as well.
Yeah, it sounds like there's something where there's a lot of potential. In fact, I've read that we're still discovering something like 1,000 nearby asteroids every year. We're going out there and collecting samples and bringing back what we might find. And it sounds like there's a lot of promise in this. I've learned that there are asteroids, some of them about 500 meters in size, that might have more platinum group metals on that one asteroid than have been mined in the history of humankind on Earth.
Yeah, so Jeff Cargill, who's a geologist at the University of Arizona, took FE90, which is a typical Apollo-class asteroid, so kind of middle-of-the-road asteroid, and he found that just this standard typical asteroid had $50 billion worth of metals, right, including like 41,000 kilograms of gold, which is double what Fort Knox held at its operating height. But the more interesting point, you brought it up when you started a second ago, is we had this, we realized that asteroid collisions could impact the Earth, right? This became something that scared us 15 years ago, so we've gone on this giant quest to map the near-Earth asteroids, and it's essentially becoming a prospector's map of the universe, which is what makes it really cool.
Yeah, and these could bring significant change to all sorts of metals prices and rare earth metals, and maybe it's even a misnomer to call them rare earth metals anymore if we're bringing them in extraterrestrially. Because 1 out of 4 industrial products that we use here in households come from platinum group metals. You've got the benefit of what some would call a dirty mining industry and being able to take a dirty mining industry off Earth and elsewhere.
Outside of the platinum earth metals, iridium, right, which is in all of our flat screens, our tantalum, which is in all of our cell phones, right, really rare here on Earth, and we're running out abundant space. Phosphorus, which we need for fertilizer. Hafnium for electronics. All these things are rare on Earth, abundant in space. So whole new industries open up once this becomes a possibility. Yeah,
so I don't know that we would call that so much of a dematerializer, because we're still extracting materials. We're just getting them from elsewhere. I guess it's just a disruptor from how we're currently mining and producing materials here on Earth.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Well, as we are producing materials here on Earth, we do have new methods of producing those with the existing materials that we have here. And one of those ways that promises to disrupt real estate, the geography of distribution, and all kinds of industry is 3D printing. And I know that you've done some work with that. What are you doing there, Stephen?
So 3D printing is, it's an astounding technology. It's another one of these, right, science fiction technologies coming science back, right? You remember the Star Trek replicator. You just kind of tell it what you want and it produces it.
Yeah.
It's essentially a 3D printer, right? And this is a technology that is sort of moving into its disruptive phase. It's been around for almost 30 years in this kind of deceptive trough where, it's promises and promises and promises, and nothing's really showed up. All that is changing now. 3D printing is accelerating exponentially, and as a result, so we're getting printers that can print in all kinds of new materials, so not just in plastics, but metals, cells, biological materials, food. There are restaurants in New York that will 3D print your meal. We're seeing it show up kind of all over the consumer products industry. Handbags, jewelry, plates, cups, take your pick, furniture. They're contour crafting walls now out of 3D printers as well, so it gets even larger. Almost all the customized medical products, so prosthetic devices, bone implants, even surgical tools, all these things massively improve patient outcomes. And I'll give you another example that's really cool. Invisalign braces, those clear plastic teeth straightening alternatives to metal braces.
Right.
All of those are 3D printed, and it's 65,000 individually customized pairs a day. Like last year, I think it was 17 million. And the crazier part is they're all 3D printed in a factory of the future that's about the size of like a high school gymnasium that's all robotically run. So it runs 24/7, 365, which is really kind of amazing. But the bigger point here is 3D printing scales, right? It can scale up, and we're seeing the beginnings of scalar impact. For example, Jay Rogers, the CEO of Local Motors, 3D printed a car in one day at a car show earlier in the year, and it absolutely runs. He is now trying to take a car, which cars have, depending, 17,000 to 24,000 parts on average. He wants to make them so they're 20 parts. So very soon, your car's going to show up like your IKEA furniture. You're going to snap it together with little instructions. So this is coming. The Chinese just 3D printed 10 single-family homes, like little cottages, in a day. So in terms of how we construct houses, going to absolutely kind of revolutionize this industry. When you look at it all told, what they're saying is 3D printing, and possibly in combination with robotics, has the potential to disrupt the entire $10 trillion manufacturing industry, which, is 1/6 of the global economy. And I'll give you a really quick, fun example from a couple of weeks ago. There was a woman, she had come out of Harvard, but she was 30 years old, and she was looking for a job, and she couldn't find one. And she realized that in really high-quality inkjet printers, right, the inks are biodegradable and they're human safe, and she could combine those inks with a 3D printer and essentially print any kind of makeup she wanted. So like the $245 billion cosmetics industry, this 30-year-old woman just figured out how to disrupt with a $70 3D printer.
That's just astounding. These are truly remarkable implications and uses of 3D printing, but you mentioned user-friendly interface, and from almost all these 3D printing examples I'm hearing about, they're all industrial applications. Is it really the lack of a user-friendly interface that keeps it from coming home and from people using these at home?
Well, yeah, so in bold, one of the things Peter and I spent a really long time looking at and trying to figure out was, when are these technologies, right, when are these accelerating technologies, when are they ripe for investment, right? When should entrepreneurs put themselves into the picture, or organizations should get involved, or investors should get involved? And, lots of people have lots of different formulas. Our belief is there's actually only one main indicator to pay attention to, and you named it. It's the development of a user-friendly interface.
Yeah.
Like the easy example here is the web, right? The web showed up in the 70s, 1975, I believe, and for the first 20 years, it was used by the military and by scientists because you essentially had to be a computer programmer to play, right? In 1993, there were literally 26 websites online. But Mark Andreessen comes along and he creates the user-friendly interface that we know as the web browser Mosaic, which becomes Netscape, right? So suddenly anybody can get online, and even better, more importantly, they can build businesses on top of this interface, right? And what happens is we go from those 26 websites online that year, a couple years later, it's 10,000. A couple years after that, we're into the millions, and then suddenly you have exponential growth, and the internet happens. We saw the same thing with the App Store. What's happening now is a lot of these technologies, 3D printing, for example, are developing these user-friendly interfaces. 3D printing, at this point in time, if you can point and click a mouse, you can print in 3D. So children can print in 3D. If you look in our book, Bold, we've got 4 or 5 examples of companies that are built on the backs of 3D printing, and the people who created the companies, when they started, they didn't even know what the technology was. They had no idea what it was, let alone how to use it, right? So what this means is, with a user-friendly interface for the first time, you don't have to be a technologist to get in the game. And I'll give you another couple examples of where this is showing up just because it's so amazing. Robotics. Here's another technology that's totally been walled off from most of society, right, for a lot of reasons. But the main reason is you had to be a computer scientist if you wanted to program a robot.
Yeah.
Enter Baxter. Baxter was created by Rodney Brooks, who created the Roomba, that little vacuum cleaner. It comes out of MIT. Baxter is a big 9-foot wingspan humanoid robot. The first user-safe, user-friendly industrial robot ever created. What I mean by that is 5 years ago, you want to get into a room with an industrial robot, nobody will let you. They're walled off behind bulletproof glass because one errant arm can decapitate you, right? So if you go into Toyota or Honda, and look, they're behind glass and you can't get near them. Well, Baxter, because its sensors have been progressing exponentially as well, has a whole new range of sensors in. So as soon as one of Baxter's arms contacts anything, even remotely solid, he freezes. This means that for the very first time in history, humans can work alongside Baxter. It opens up a whole new kind of human-robotic collaborative possibility space. Second of all, Baxter's cheap. He's $22,000 right now. So almost any entrepreneur can actually work with Baxter. And in fact, a couple weeks ago, I saw there are now, for a scaled-down version of Baxter, you can 3D print one. So you can print a Baxter for free, essentially, if you have a 3D printer or access to a 3D printer. What's more is if you want to program Baxter, you grab his arms and you move them through the motion you want Baxter to move. He's programmed. So again, a child can program Baxter. Anybody can start building a business on the backs of this technology. It opens up huge entrepreneurial possibilities for start.
Yeah, for one thing, I guess that is a more user-friendly interface when it's designed so that you're not going to be decapitated when you're dealing with your robot there.
Yeah, fair point.
We talk about location here since there are a lot of real estate investor listeners. These changing industries often move where the jobs are going to be, and oftentimes it seems that it doesn't necessarily increase unemployment and take jobs away. It just kind of shifts where jobs go. So rather than a traditional manufacturing job, one might be now at designing things for 3D printers to print.
So there's 2 points tucked into the point you made, and both are important. First, for example, with 3D printing, right? Manufacturing jobs over the past 20 years, as we've all seen, have gone to Asia, predominantly China. 3D printing is bringing them back into the community, right, into all of our communities, right? That's one of the things it's doing is it's moving manufacturing back. So some of those jobs that we lost, they're now going to be coming back, obviously different versions of them. But your larger point, I think, is the really interesting question, right? It's, are these new technologies going to take our jobs or not? And it's, this is not a new question, right? People have been asking this question for hundreds of years. If you go back to the 18th century, 75% of America were farmers. Today, it's less than 2%, right? When those jobs started to go away, people panicked. They thought, oh, my God, what they didn't see is the manufacturing revolution coming. So, it does appear that, inside each of these exponentially accelerating technology, what history tells us is there's sort of an internet-sized opportunity inside each of them, right? So we saw that with the App Store. We saw that with the internet itself. We saw that with, computers, just to kind of name a few that we've seen. But virtual reality. Here's a technology that sort of exists now. Most of us know that Facebook bought Oculus, this, VR goggles for about $1 billion, and they know that there's a lot of development coming, but you're not really paying attention to it. And what people aren't seeing is that there's probably an internet-sized opportunity sitting inside of virtual reality. And, to put an actual economic point on it, back in 1996 in Second Life, right, a very primitive virtual reality, right, the very first Second Life millionaire was created. So somebody literally earned $1 million on income totally generated in Second Life. So we already know there are, economies hidden inside of virtual reality. We just haven't had the technology, the user-friendly access points to get at those technologies. That's what's coming online over the next 3 to 5 years. And so we could see, another internet-sized explosion inside of VR.
One trend I see with a lot of the technologies that you're talking about, especially as it relates to real estate, is it seems that it puts more of a premium on residential real estate. We saw retailing go downhill ever since the advent of the internet, and now we might see industry change as more people are able to have 3D printers at home. And I don't really know who's going to beat who to the punch. Are we going to have the Amazon drone deliver products to our home in the mainstream first, or are we going to have the ability to 3D print those products first? I don't know which one of those is going to come first, But to me, it points to the trend that residential real estate has even more use and utility than ever because we can do more things from home than ever.
It's an interesting question because there's two sides of it. Everything you just said is absolutely correct, right? And that trend is, we're seeing that. And farther away, right? I live in a very remote town in the middle of the mountains in northern New Mexico, 2,000 people, pretty isolated, right? And yet I run a research institute. I write books. I have a full kind of business life. There's a lot that I can do from the middle of nowhere. My life wouldn't have been possible 15 years ago, just at all. So totally possible now, and that underpins what you're saying at a really practical level. On the other side of it is we know 70% of the population, maybe even 75% of the population by 2025 will be living in big cities, right? Those are just kind of standard growth statistics for city living. So it's going to put a premium on kind of urban real estate for sure because so many people are going to be migrating into cities. And I think it'll also put a premium on residential stuff because we're going to be able to do so much more and from farther and farther away.
Yeah, now the interesting thing is with the advent of the internet, some people thought that our geography would help humans suburbanize and exurbanize rather than move into cities because now you can do things remotely. So what do you think it is with the trend actually going the other way? For example, Stephen, between previous censuses, 1990 to 2000 and 2000 to 2010, we sort of saw a re-urbanization rather than a de-urbanization that we saw previously. So what is it about technology, even though it allows us to do things remotely that we had to collaborate with people for earlier? Why are we re-urbanizing? Do you have any idea?
I think there are, a lot of forces. I mean, first of all, a lot of this is taking place in the developing world. So people are following opportunity at this point, and there's way more opportunity in the city than there is in the country. The numbers are skewed because of that trend. So that's the most of what we're looking at. But I think, we're starting to understand kind of more and more about innovation and rates of innovation and things like that. And even like Yahoo, who let everybody work remotely, they started to realize that, hey, wait, having all these people together so you can kind of get network effects, creativity come from pattern recognition and new ideas bumping into one another, and it's denser in cities. So, cities function as innovation factories, and there's a tremendous amount of kind of proof. They did a lot of research on this at the Santa Fe Institute, so if you want hard numbers, Jeffrey White's work will give it to you. But I think we're starting to kind of understand innovation more and more at kind of every level of business, and it's driving people together because we're more innovative when we're together. So I think you're seeing a lot of like push-pull trends like that.
I've asked you so far about quite a few sort of real estate and investor-driven trends, but you have so many diverse interests, and you're working on all of them on a high level, pushing things where no one's ever been before. What else are you working on?
The things that I'm looking at, right now, for example, in Tomorrowland, right? I'm not just specifically interested in the kind of the intersection of science fiction becoming science fact. I'm really interested in kind of the disruptive impact this is going to have on culture. Our technology has gotten so advanced, we're starting to kind of really erode fundamental things about what it means to be human. And let me give you an example. And there are market implications, and there are cultural implications, and there are interpersonal implications, but let's look at bionics for half a second.
Okay.
In Tomorrowland, you'll find the story of the world's first bionic soldier, Major David Rosell, and he's got a fully functional bionic ankle made by a guy named Hugh Harris out of MIT and a company called iWalk. Soldiers are wearing these ankles into combat in Iraq and Afghanistan already, and this is almost old news by this point. So right now, today, we can replace 50% of the human body with bionics. We've seen dads printing 3D printable bionic arms for their kids. There's companies that you can download 3D printed blueprints for bionics, which is $1,000 for a bionic arm. We've got mind-brain interfaces, so paraplegics and quadriplegics can operate their bionic limbs with their minds. The crazy part is not that, like, what we're talking about here is replacement parts, right? My parts, I'm getting old, my parts are replaced, can I replace them? We're also getting exoskeletons, so strap-on bionics. These are hitting the market right now, and these do things like put more energy back into the system. So if you've got a bum knee, you can now put a bionic brace on that not only keeps your knee in place, it puts energy into the system. It can actually make your knee better, stronger, faster than it was before. You got to think about what this means. we have, for all human history, we've grown old. Growing old and losing the use of our limbs, right, decrepitude. The number one complaint about getting older, first of all, we have an kind of internal reaction to it. We know it's a general part of life, and suddenly it's not. So the bionics, we think we're building new bodies, but I'm really interested in the fact that this stuff is going to start impacting our brains, and we're going to end up with new minds as well. And that's really interesting to me.
Being a savvy investor is really being able to anticipate change and to know what's coming and be ahead of it and get to where the hockey puck is going to be, not where it is. So, yeah, I want to thank you for joining me today, Stephen Kotler. I really think that any of my listeners that are interested in what's coming next ought to check out Tomorrowland or any of the other work from Stephen Kotler and Peter Diamandis.
Have a great day.
Hey, thanks for joining me. Keep elevating humankind.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Great stuff from Stephen Kotler today. So what do you think? I mean, mind blown or what? Well, to get involved as an investor, an innovator, or a reader of Stephen's mind-expanding body of work, check out StephenKotler.com for some really transcendent material. If you're looking to read something that can both expand your mind and help you be a better investor, find one of his 7 great books like Tomorrowland, Abundance, and Bold at StephenKotler.com. There's more there. Check it out. It's a cool site. Hey, thanks to Stephen Kotler today. At Get Rich Education, we'll continue to keep watch on how future technology and innovation can affect your real estate and your investing. Thanks for being with us. I hope you enjoyed this one and that it stretched your mental bandwidth. For GRE's right-hand man, John Collins, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Live an abundant life until we meet again next Friday, and don't quit your daydream.
You've been listening to the Get Rich Education podcast, telling you what the wealthy won't tell you about real estate and investing. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to visit iTunes and leave your comments.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.